Hi, welcome to valuationpodcast.com, a podcast and video series about all things related to business and valuation. My name is Melissa Gregg, and I provide online business mediation and valuation services based out of St. Louis, Missouri. Today, we're actually going to discuss money court, financial and business disputes, which actually is a little bit of a show. And money court it has had one season so far, and we are actually talking today with Eric Schatz, who is the executive producer of Money Court, and they are looking for kind of additional companies for the second season. So I thought that it would be kind of interesting to our listeners to talk about some of the various ways that businesses get in some type of dispute, and really there are just certain points, inflection points, if you will, in a business when there are more money issues. And so those are some of the things that we're talking about. But maybe, Eric, you should start us off a little bit about you and some of the things that you're looking for and the producers are looking for the show.
All right. Our show is called Money Court. It's hosted by Kevin O'Leary of Shark Tank fame. But Kevin is a serial entrepreneur. And when we were creating this particular program, the idea is how can we help people where the number one dispute in business and in relationships for the most part, and I'm sure Randy can speak more to that, has to do with money at its core root. And not that it's the root of all evils, but it does have a big factor in a relationship. Right now, since the pandemic, the courtroom, the court world is just backed up. And trials are taking longer, litigation is taking longer, and it's a very draining and expensive process. We decided to see, is there a way to come in and do a court show? I'm not doing a court show. No disrespect to Judge Judy, because I think the show is amazing. But their cases could be, I have a $50 hose that my neighbor's dog ate. You need to buy me a new hose. That's not our show. Okay. If you have an invention, that's not our show. If you have a dispute over invention, that's our show. So what we're looking for is two sides that are either that need advice on how to move forward in their business, or have a literary money dispute, like about cash that you owe me. Those are the stories we're looking for. They need to be in a legitimate business. They need to factor where there are two sides that have stakes. If nobody cares what the decision is, it doesn't really work for our television show. There's lots of other ways to solve that. Here's one where you're finding a complication, where you're looking for someone to come in. Both sides have agreed to be binding in terms of the decision. We hear both sides of the story, and then Kevin renders a decision based on the information that is given to him.
So, Eric, what's sort of interesting to me, we were talking before the podcast began, how you're really in the relationship business, right? People that have a business dispute you have to have some sort of relationship. In my world, it's usually that they're married to each other and they created a business, or they are dividing a business, and we have valuation stuff. But that seems what's fascinating to me. All litigation is not relationship oriented. If someone hits me in my car, I'm never going to see them again. They're not part of my life. But in your situation, on your show, these are people that actually know each other and built trust or built something together. Got to make it that much more interesting.
Right. And we're dealing with family businesses. Again, there's a lot of sides to a relationship. Sometimes it comes in the prenup before the business happens.
Absolutely.
How do we set it up? Some of them, and it's too late, and you don't want to spend all your money on the lawyers, no disrespect, but you want to sit there and try to figure out, how do we solve this and keep everything we have? That's a very difficult world to do, especially when you have a relationship that goes beyond the boardroom and goes into a bedroom. That changes everything. And our idea is, how do you get that and keep what's core important, but find those ways to solve problems? Because communication is generally at the core root of everything. I think people also don't understand in business quite often how to, set up a partnership. I'm not saying you have to have a partnership lengthy agreement, but you do have to have an understanding, and you should lay something out if you're both in a business or there are multiple partners, so that it's layered out and cleared. Most people, what they decide to do is, we have a partnership. Melissa, Rainey, and I have a partnership. We're equal partners. We each get 33 and a third. And that's great. And a dollar comes in and we each get our 33 and a third. It's fantastic. Until we lose a dollar, and then it's Melissa's fault. Okay. And that's where these relationships are not set up for what goes wrong. They're only set up because we've been best friends our whole life. We're buddy. What could possibly go wrong? We've been friends since elementary school. We have cases we're casting right now that involve that at the core issue. We've known each other since elementary school. We went into the military together. We're now in a business together. We don't agree on how to move forward. We can't
Right.
figure out how to move forward. This
Well,
one,
and
you did this to me. This is literally, we're stuck. Two people want to go two different directions. One wants to buy, one wants to rent. It's that simple. And the decision has to be made, and they can't do it. And it's affecting the relationship that underlies all of it.
Well, and I think that in those types of situations, what we're typically looking for is like the operating agreement. Okay, well, let's see, what does the operating agreement or your buy sell agreement tell about how you guys can deal with this situation? And they come back just like you said, and they're like, well, we were friends, so we don't really have one. So now it becomes a little gray because now we don't have a prescribed way to deal with the situation. And so a lot of times they're going to business arbitration or mediation, which is kind of part of the show is that you alluded to is kind of two parties agreeing to go through kind of an arbitration or mediation of the show to solve their issue, right?
The biggest problem we have with all these people is the word oral agreement is used way too easily. So when anyone has a problem, they go, we had an oral agreement. Totally, he said it, I said it, we agreed to this completely. And that's the root of all of it, was what you find is the underlying communication to all of this is it's not laid out. It's not clear. There's ambiguity. And our show loves the gray. I'll live in the gray all day long. I have no problem with that. If you're in business, not so good. Okay.
Right.
Not that you have to have black and white, but you need to know boundaries. You need to know out of bounds. You need to know where the end zone is. You have to, define the field.
It's funny, Eric, you talked about a prenup, and it's sort of the same thing. When you're getting into a business or a relationship with someone you care about and you're friends with, you don't think about what could go wrong. You're getting into it because you trust each other, you respect each other, you admire each other, you want them to be your partner. And I have that conversation all the time with people. You have to think about it from a perspective of what happens if it all goes wrong. And nobody does that, right? There's very few people think about the bad side. They've all got these optimistic, big, wide eyes. We're going to make a lot of money. And again, it keeps me in business. It's keeping your show in business. That people don't think ahead. And then there's not a lot of rules and regulations for what happens when it doesn't go like everyone thinks, when they don't become a unicorn.
I do think in this kind of programming, there's great takeaway. And I think that's the other side of this is, yes, there's the drama of a court show. And then we put it to court show loosely because Kevin doesn't wear a robe or anything like that. So he's not a fake TV judge. He's just an entrepreneur who's trying to solve problems. And you'll find multiple times that in that problem solving, the story tends to change. It rarely does it stay consistent. When you ask 3 or 4 probing questions, you see the story start to change. And as soon as you see that, if you could set up something in advance and say, look, if you had this agreement, this settlement would be easy. You both take your piece of paper, you go left, I go right. We set up in advance, no hard feeling. We didn't lose a fortune trying to unravel it. That's where the problem comes, is when there is no communication, there is no agreement, there isn't this oral agreement, that all of a sudden everyone takes whatever side supports them. And that's difficult in business. And business is not easy, especially today. This is a rough time for businesses, and people are stressed, and you're working remotely where we used to sit in the office together and, I could watch you, and now I know you're stealing money because you're at your house. And, there's all those things come up. And I think people's true colors also come out in a lot of these things. You thought is your friend, who gave the business to someone else, not so much.
Well, and I think when we get into some family businesses, what we're seeing right now is the pandemic has kind of pushed businesses to decide, do you want to continue doing what you're doing? Do you want to refigure it out, or do you want to quit? And you have a lot of baby boomers that are kind of like, I don't know if I want to refigure it out, but my son or my grandson wants to go to 5 different locations. And can't we just sit here and do everything the same? So I think a lot of those things are happening in family businesses. Are those, could those also create kind of a situation?
God, yes. Family businesses are a great area. I mean, I run a family business. So my son works with it. My wife works with us. All my other kids who have, through their lives, have worked for us. I've kept it part of what we are. So I run that, and I'm very partial to running a family business. But there's also an understanding and how you run that. And we had a case that we were working on where it was a father-son owned a theater The son wanted to modernize the theater. The father didn't want to put a penny into the theater. The kid was like, Dad, the future's my friends. They book it online with their telephones. And the dad's like got a rotary phone in his home and doesn't understand how would an app help my theater. There's a generational understanding of how things happen. And, not that I am the youngest one, but clearly, youth has its advantages. There's a lack of fear. There's a lack of understanding. And to that end, some of the naivete is good, possibly in a family business. You have to be open to it. But if it's the father relationship in the family and a son, it's different in business where my son runs development for us, and he has an idea. I can't be the father. It's a
Right.
business at that point. And you
Mhm.
have to treat it like that.